Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be reviewing the new album by country singer Kacey Musgraves. This album is titled Golden Hour, and it is her third studio album. Kacey Musgraves is kind of a unique artist for country, as she has a much more progressive sound, and also her lyrics are what would be considered very sly and sassy and very poignant for the times that we live in. And it kind of represents country in a new way and a new light for this generation. And it's something that I think represents country in the way it should be represented very well. Kacey has this down-to-earth, easygoing personality that oozes through in her songwriting. She's very relatable. She's a very brilliant songwriter. And she also, at the same time, is very aware of all of the issues and hypocrisy of modern day country music, as well as country of the past, though I would say definitely more so in modern day country. She's a refreshing artist to hear from the genre, and I'll confess she's one of the few country artists I would consider myself a fan of. That's not to say I've heard every single Kacey Musgraves song. She has released 2 albums already, Same Trailer, Different Park, which is one of my favorite album titles, and Pageant Material. I haven't actually really heard much of Pageant Material. I kind of just looked over that album. I was very kind of preoccupied at the time. I don't know why it kind of slipped under my radar. I think I only heard really one song off of it called Somebody to Love, which I thought was quite endearing and beautiful. Otherwise, Same Trailer, Different Park was the album, of course, we all were introduced to her from, and I did find some very fun songs on that one to be quite memorable. Merry-Go-Round, I loved the lyricism. It was so clever, so witty, so important, I think, to put into a song, especially coming from a Texan girl who would live in such a probably conservative community, but highlighting the hypocrisy of these, rural communities of being so Christian and good, but also being so, fallen apart and decrepit to some extent. The hypocrisy there. And we're on this broken merry-go-round. We just keep going round and round. I remember, I wish iTunes did this, but they don't do this anymore. iTunes used to do a free single of the week. And I remember her song Blowing Smoke was what was highlighted for the week that her album came out in, I believe it was March of 2013. And I thought it was just really funny. I liked the lyrics. I wasn't so crazy about anything else. I mean, it wasn't really my style of music, and it still really isn't. But I just found the lyrics to be so unapologetic and so raw and real, and something we didn't really hear a lot from country artists. I kind of thought maybe the humor was the best part about her sound. Well, the thing that's different about this album is this album tones down that sort of humorous, sarcastic side. It's not something I lament, though, because her voice is so raw and emotional and pure. There's this sort of girly charm to it, and she has this way of hitting the notes. It's not always perfect, Sometimes I almost wonder if she's actually on pitch occasionally. But it's not a drawback for me, because the way she delivers her vocals, well, it's a country style to be a little bit what I call homegrown vocals. They're very kind of, yeah, they're rooted in her voice, and it's not over dramatically trying to reach every note to perfection. There's just something very approachable about her voice and sound. It's very soothing. And of course, her voice, it's not a belting voice. It's a very smooth, silky voice. And I love how her accent just comes through on certain R words and R sounds, like when she says learn. There's that twang to it, but it's not overly done, like some country artists, like in bro country, try to like rev up in their sound. I will just preface this by saying, I know I'm getting off topic already. I hate bro country, and it is something that we see so much now in modern country music. I definitely, if I were to consider country music, I would definitely consider older country music. I cannot stand this sort of faux country Luke Bryan type sound that is so popular on the radio. And there are so many, particularly male country artists, that follow this formula. Think Florida Georgia Line, think Jason Aldean. I mean, I know that some of these artists are very talented songwriters, and I know that songwriting is often considered the crux or the cornerstone of country, not so much the formulaic production or instrumentals that carry out that message, because they do all start to sound the same. There's not a lot of experimentation or interesting sort of production or anything to really think about or phone home about. It's always about the songwriting and the storytelling. And that is something I give credit to country for, and that's always the place that I would look to really good storytelling from. Some of the best storyteller type songs I know of are from country, and Kacey Musgraves is the great maker of several of those. Well, what makes Golden Hour so special is that she is experimenting with country. Now, she's not the first Nashville artist to try and mainstreamify country music. Like I said, you can look to bro country as the perfect example of that. There's added, more pop country elements to a lot of these artists. I mean, even Taylor Swift, she was huge on this back in the day. Kacey is still actually quite country in her sound, but there's this ambiance and reverb to the layering of the production. And it's not that there's necessarily unfamiliar instruments to country. It's still a steel drum, still a banjo, still a piano, keyboards type fare with a typical drum line you would find in a country song. But the production, it reminds me so much of an album by Madonna called Ray of Light. You may have heard of it. And I can't help but feel like William Orbit might have worked on some of these songs. There's this very spacey production that's kind of layered onto some of these songs. And instead of feeling too overly done or cheesy, it feels very extremely self-aware and mysterious country, kind of folk-leaning pop. There are some dance influences on this record, which is kind of a newer and bigger thing for her. If you point to High Horse, for example, the Bee Gees influence is so strong. I would even go even further to say that that song has a lot of almost house and ABBA influence, which is something you would never think to put in the same sentence as a country song. I mean, there's still the banjo instrumental, which kind of carries that aesthetic, but it's such a fun song. And High Horse is a very more kind of cleverly crafted, witty get back song, which is something we're so much more used to hearing from Kacey. And I love that. I would really like to see this song do well as a single. I think it's single material for sure on this album, and it is one of my favorites. But if we look to the most of the album, it's actually very sparsed out. It's actually quite minimalistic in approach. A lot of the time, we just have this very kind of nice rumbling guitar instrumental in the background, but we have just this very airy reverbed synth layering kind of going on all around it that sort of creates this very nice sheen or pale blue air and atmosphere, giving it that ray of light airy feel. Of course, foregoing the also comparison of the album covers. I mean, Ray of Light's album cover is vaguely similar to Golden Hours, but I'm not going to draw that comparison as a bad thing because no one owns the fact that there's a color blue sky and her face is on the cover. It seems like it is paying homage to that. I don't think Kacey was doing that subconsciously. I think she was aware of that influence. And that sort of psychedelia is imbued into songs like Slow Burn, which is it's the perfect name for what the song really is, because the song does not, it creeps up on you. It does not assert itself as you would expect a song like Slow Burn to be. It feels very timeless and it feels very self-aware and wise. Her describing how she was always late for things except when she was born back in 1988. How her grandmother screamed when she got her nose pierced. Some of these anecdotal kind of references to her childhood that may seem left field, but they kind of tie in the whole picture of reality of life, of moving through this journey. And this album is, as the title track implies, about her feeling as though she is in her golden hour. She wrote about the eclipse that happened right over Tennessee, where she lives, back in August of 2017, right on her 29th birthday. And she wrote Golden Hour, I think the title track, inspired by this sort of meeting of events that felt so timely and so euphoric to some extent. And she couldn't help but celebrate. I mean, she is also newly married. She's living a life of much calmer, sort of peaceful contentment, and you can feel that in these records. That's why there's not so much of the smart, sassy, kind of provocative lyrics of songs like Blowing Smoke or Biscuits. She doesn't feel so much like she needs to call shots out anymore. She's at a place where she wants to just revel in her own self-identity. And there is an element of also embracing an introspective sort of understanding of the world. The song Mother, which is the shortest song on this record, is another great example of a really visceral emotional moment and feeling that she had to translate into a song. Her thinking about her mother back in Texas, as she lives currently now in Tennessee, and she sings about, and I keep thinking about the time that's slipping and missing when she's missing her mother, and she's thinking about her own mother, and her own mother is thinking about her mother, who is, of course, passed on. And so there's this familial link that unites them as a family and also as people. It's a very relatable essence of mortality, idea of passing on the emotional weight of life and the lineage of that. It's a very heavy subject, and I think the fact that the song is so brief, I would love it to be a little longer. I think it has such a beautiful melody line that I think is underutilized for this song, being it so abrupt and short. There's just something so emotional, and you can't help but think tears come to your eyes when you think about, yeah, I've thought about this before too. There are so many moments on this record where I was just blown away by how relatable it was in the emotional revelations she's sharing. The song Lonely Weekend is so much more fun and playful and airy, and it's one of the more positive songs, but it's also very melancholic. It's singing about being lonely on the weekend, something that many introverted people in relationships can relate to. Kacey strikes me as someone, and she even says in the song, she only has a few friends. And if she was with her sister, she'd probably have a lot more fun. I only have a few friends. I could argue I don't even have that many friends because my other friends are quite introverted as well, and we don't hang out that often. But if I was within a relationship with a significant other, they would be my source of social camaraderie. I wouldn't really need much else. But the problem is that when they're gone, you don't really have anyone else. You do feel lonely. But I'm a solitary person, and I'm okay with that. And she admits in the song, everyone's okay to be alone sometimes. It's all part of being who you are and celebrating life. And you should celebrate it. And this song does. And I love that sort of airy instrumental that she uses towards the bridge. It just adds that sort of playful experimental vibe that gives it something that you would feel like when you're kind of feeling yourself and having a fun day, and looking at the sunny side of things instead of thinking, oh, it's another lonely weekend. I'm going to be depressed about this. The song that I would be remiss in not mentioning on how emotionally impactful it is would be Oh What a World. I think this is probably my favorite song on this record. From the opening vocoder effect lyric, which is so avant-garde for country, I mean, let's not even begin. This song screams ray of light. Even the lyrics just describing how the world, how we came to be, this esoteric existential, crooning about the universe. It screams, again, I'm going to keep drawing the Ray of Light by Madonna comparison, but there are all of those elements in there. I love the songwriting. It's so rich and so textured and so well thought out to describe something that is indescribable, and that is this beautiful world that we live in. That bittersweet melancholy, which is always my favorite thing that I love in any sort of good song, is there in full force. Butterflies is another cute song. It was another single that was released along with the pre-order of this record. In hindsight, I think the song has become a little bit too simplistic for me. It's a very cute love song about feeling butterflies in your stomach and feeling your wings being untied as you approach someone that you feel so strongly for. And that geniality is just something that, again, is very welcoming. These songs just open you up with welcoming arms. They're not trying to close off to you at all. The more playful keyboard chord progressions on Butterflies, along with this sort of poppy, cheerful melody, reminds me a lot of Sarah Bareilles, and that's not a bad thing. There's a lot of Sarah Bareilles influence on this record, and I definitely see comparisons, as Sarah sometimes gets a little country, and even Sarah's latest album, The Blessed Unrest, I can hear that influence in the sort of thematic imagery and the sort of overall soundscape. And I'm definitely here for it, as I love that sort of bittersweet, melancholic, liberatory sort of ambiance that both of these albums celebrate. And they make them very timeless because of. These albums feel like they could be released 20 years ago, or they could be released 20 years from now. They're just so timeless, and they're not rooted to any specific trend. Because they're so deeply personal, and they're so deeply about like more of an existential angst or feeling. There's another song called Space Cowboy. This song is very sweeping. This is very broad. This definitely thinks home on the range imagery. And it does have that traditional country sound with what I would consider a new age twist. You can have your space cowboy. You can't keep a wild horse in a pen without the gate open. Very wise, very smart ideology in terms of understanding a relationship that just might not work when they're so pressed together all the time. You need to let someone have their space, especially if they're an introvert and you're, suffocating them. It's so important. I don't think she's necessarily saying this in like a jaded way. She's literally saying it's okay. You need your space. But I also love the fact that it's a, space cowboy. It adds that sort of new age outer space cosmic element to the song, which is so imbued in the production. Even though the song has nothing to do with being a space cowboy, which is a really kind of fun song title. The closing track, Rainbow, beautifully closes the album. I had a feeling we were going to probably close on a very emotional piano ballad. And of course, the song is so endearing about keeping your head up that you thought you had to have this umbrella clutched so tightly for so long. I love how she sings, "Your umbrella." It's just like cute. It's not like necessarily something that's going to make you want to phone home and be like, this is the most gorgeous melody I've ever heard. But it's cute, and it does kind of speak to that craft of singer-songwriters just going to the piano and just spur of the moment coming up with an idea for a song and not thinking too much about it afterwards. Like, did it sound that good? That song has that recorded live feel to it. And of course, calling a song Rainbow, which I think might be a bit of a general song title, especially coming after Kesha's Rainbow album. It feels like maybe it could have been a different song title just to signify itself and separate itself out from Kesha. But, no one owns the title Rainbow. Just like I said, the Ray of Light album cover idea, the blue sky, these are things that they might seem like familiar tropes, but I don't find it to be overplayed out or cheesy for Kacey. Maybe I'm giving her a pass because she's a country artist and I'm just trying to get anything from country. If she wasn't a country artist and she was putting this out, maybe I would find it to be a little lackluster and too country and too tepid. And there are songs like Love is a Wild Thing is a cute song. I'm not going to deny that. It has a great melody line. And it's a very traditional country song, and it's something I could easily see Carrie Underwood singing. There's nothing wrong with that. It still doesn't mean it's a bad song. But I was really interested to see what was different and unique in setting apart this album from other country artists of her contemporaries. I really find Kacey to be an interesting character. I'm very interested in the voice and the mind of Kacey. And I think that, although maybe some more instrumentals could have been used, maybe she could have pushed that element even more, that would probably be a bit of a big step for her. I mean, she is still coming from a very traditional country singer-songwriter background. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Songs like Velvet Elvis definitely fit more in her previous catalog. They're very much more cute with a little bit of camp thrown in there for fun and wittiness' sake. And I don't mind that. They're just not really highlights in my opinion. Or more feminist songs like Wonder Woman, where, she is asserting herself and saying, I'm not a Wonder Woman, and no woman should ever have to be expected to be one. And again, there are some pop sensibilities in the production of those songs, which makes them very upbeat. And overall, this is a sunny spring day. I think it was perfectly released for this time of year, where we're starting to really feel the spring weather. It's finally coming. It feels like winter is always the end of March, like never going to release us from its clutches. And this song is, I hate to say the word, a ray of light again, but the golden hour, yeah, this is Kacey feeling liberated and creating a timeless record, and one that I think could do very, very well in terms of critical analysis. And I wouldn't be surprised if this album could win Grammys, definitely for country, in the country category, but I would say this album is deserved of being in the actual Album of the Year category for the 2019 Grammys. So you never know. I mean, if Chris Stapleton can do it, why can't Kacey Musgraves? I'm always going to be rooting a little bit more for the female country artists and female artists in general. So I'd really like to see her win some real decent recognition for this record. She's a tremendous talent. Let me know in the comments what you think about this album, and if any other kind of non-country fans flock to this record and Kacey in general, because I am definitely not a country fan, and Kacey makes me one. But just for this music, I'm not necessarily going to be all about country all the time just because of Kacey Musgraves. It's Kacey's unique brand of country that will always draw me in and always make me want to listen. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. Please give a like and subscribe if you did. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Peace, love, and light. Bye.
They're heading out to work. clothes for